All right, let's get right into it. Picture this. A government decides to ban social media, thinking it'll shut down criticism. But instead, it backfires spectacularly. You've got a full-blown, youth-led revolution on your hands. And the wild part? It wasn't organized on the streets, not at first. It was run from a gaming app, and it toppled the entire government in just 5 days. Now, this isn't some sci-fi movie plot. This is the incredible, true story of what went down in Nepal in September 2025.
And this quote from a student protester, Abash Rajlamichani, it really gets to the heart of it all. Everybody wanted a change. You see, at the core of this whole digital uprising was a very real, very human frustration. This wasn't just about getting back on Instagram. It was a desperate cry against a system they felt was completely broken.
So how on earth did this all happen so fast? Well, here's how we're going to break it down. First up, we'll look at the powder keg, the conditions that made Nepal ripe for revolution. Then, the spark, the inferno, what actually lit the fuse. After that, we'll dive into their amazing digital command center, see how a new leader rises from the chaos, and finally, we'll look at the unsettled aftermath.
All right, first things first, the powder keg. These kinds of explosions, they don't just happen overnight, right? In Nepal, the anger had been simmering below the surface for years, really fueled by this toxic mix of economic pain and just blatant, in-your-face inequality. And man, the contrast here is it's stark. It's really what lit the fuse for so many people. Think about this for a second. On one hand, you've got the average person making about $1,400 a year, with a 20% unemployment rate for young people. And on the other hand, you have the political elites and their kids just flaunting this unbelievable luxury all over social media. It's not hard to see why an entire generation felt like they were being completely left in the dust. So why was a social media ban the thing that set it all off? Well, you've got to look at who we're talking about here. Nepal's population is super young. The median age is only 25, and they are one of the most plugged-in populations in the entire region. For them, these online spaces weren't just for posting memes. It was a lifeline. It was how they talked to each other, got their news, and for a lot of them, how they made a living. And all that frustration, it got boiled down into one single powerful hashtag, #NepoBabies. The trend just exploded online. Young Nepalese started sharing photos, stories, you name it, of politicians' kids living these incredibly privileged lives. That hashtag became the rallying cry, a perfect symbol of the corruption and nepotism they felt was destroying their futures.
Okay, so we've got the powder keg, right? All this anger just sitting there ready to blow. All it needed was a spark. And on September 4th, 2025, the government handed it to them on a silver platter.
And what a spark it was. The government didn't just ban 1 or 2 platforms. Nope, they banned 26 of them. We're talking the big ones. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, even WhatsApp. Gone. Overnight. For millions of young people, it was like the government just pulled the plug on their entire world. And then, things just unraveled. I mean, at a mind-blowing speed. Just look at this timeline. It's insane. On September 8th, peaceful protests turned deadly. The very next day, the Prime Minister is gone and Parliament is on fire. By the 12th, a new leader, chosen online, is being sworn in. The entire political system was flipped on its head in less than a week. Wow. Which brings up a huge question. How in the world did they pull this off? How did they coordinate everything so fast? Well, that takes us to their digital command center. And this, folks, is where the story gets really, really interesting. The revolution was coordinated from a place the government never even thought to look. I mean, think about it. How do you get thousands of people onto the streets when the very tools you'd normally use to do that are gone? The government shut them all down. The answer? They got creative. Really creative.
They basically put together this Gen Z revolutionary toolkit. They used VPNs to get around the ban and get back on Instagram. They even used old-school paper flyers with QR codes to pull people into their digital spaces. But the real nerve center, the secret headquarters for this whole operation, believe it or not, it was Discord.
And I want you to just let this number sink in for a second. Over 100,000 members on one single Discord server. It wasn't just for chatting. This was a virtual war room, a town square, and a tactical hub, all rolled into one. They planned protests, shared safety info, and discussed pretty much everything. But then they did something that I don't think anyone has ever done before. With the government in total collapse and a huge power vacuum, they held an election, a mini-election, right there on Discord.
They debated different nominees, they had separate channels just for fact-checking, and they held live polls to vote. And then, and this is the craziest part, they took the winner's name and went straight to the army with it. The audacity!
So, what happens when you hold an election on a gaming app and present the results to the military? Well, that brings us to the rise of a new leader and the incredible outcome of this experiment in digital democracy. This wasn't just about tearing something down anymore. This was about building something new.
And the people's choice? It was Sushila Karki, a former Chief Justice who was widely respected. And get this, in a truly historic moment, she was appointed interim Prime Minister, becoming Nepal's first ever female leader. Her legitimacy, her entire mandate came directly from that vote on Discord. Just incredible.
And her new government? They didn't waste any time. They hit the ground running. They dissolved the old, corrupt parliament, they set a date for new elections, they promised to help the families of those who were killed, and they called for everyone to come together. Their first job was basically just to stop the bleeding and pull the whole country back from the edge of the cliff.
But, a victory that fast and that chaotic, it doesn't come without a cost. The political win was huge, but the aftermath was messy and painful. A revolution like this always leaves scars, and the human cost here was immense.
So let's talk about that human cost. In the end, 76 people lost their lives. A lot of them were students, just kids really, who were killed in those first few days when police opened fire. That is the real price of this revolution.
And on top of that, more than 2,100 people were injured. The violence that ripped through Kathmandu and other cities it was intense, and it touched thousands and thousands of lives directly.
And as if that wasn't enough, you had a total breakdown of law and order. During the chaos, prisons were literally attacked and set on fire. And get this, over 13,000 prisoners escaped. Can you imagine? That's a massive security nightmare for any government, let alone a brand new, fragile one.
So in the end, they did it. They used the tools of their generation to bring down a government in record time. It's an absolutely incredible story. But it leaves us with one huge lingering question. When the protests are over, when the streets fall silent, and the Discord channels go quiet, can a revolution that was born online actually build a democracy that lasts in the real world? That's the question Nepal is facing right now. And honestly, the next chapter is still being written.